We got a bone to pick here. Kind of upset, not gonna lie. Actually, give me 1 second. We gotta set the mood. There we go. Much better. So as most of you guys have probably heard by now, there's been propositions that MLB has formally allowed the Rays to become a two-city team within Tampa Bay and Montreal. And in case you're confused, by no means does this mean it's confirmed. It just means if the Rays want to, they can become a two-city team within Tampa Bay or St. Petersburg, where they actually play, and Montreal, Canada. But I don't think this could actually happen for many, many years in the future, so have to wait and see. But of course, as a Rays fan, I'm obviously not happy about this for many, many reasons that I want to get into, but at the same point, I'm also going to lay down some facts, you know, just really how things are going for the Rays where they are right now, because it's no secret the Rays are considered a poverty franchise by a lot of people. I personally don't think we're poverty, but if you look at our stadium and attendance numbers, yeah, it might show it. Tampa Bay Rays became a Major League Baseball team in 1998, where they started in Tropicana Field, where it originally housed more than 45,000 seats within there. Check back now to where it's about 25,000. So within 22 years, they've lost 20,000 seats. Now, St. Petersburg, where Tropicana Field is located, is a quite populated city within Florida, the 5th most populated at 265,000 people. Just keep that in mind as I lay down these stats for you. The Rays' opening season in 1998 at Tropicana Field, they had a 68.2% average turnout rate for their seating, which, considering they did not play that well in their opening season, is pretty good. But also, you got to think this is St. Petersburg, Florida, a very populated city and a very populated state, and they couldn't even pull quite 70%. And that would go even more to show in the next year in 1999, where that percentage dropped off to 43% the year after their first year. So it seems like a lot of that was most likely because they were the new thing in town and everybody wanted to check them out, but over a 20% drop off because they performed pretty much the same. They didn't do much worse, so it was hard to do much worse than they did in their opening year, as most expansion teams are, but you can really go to show that maybe people weren't that interested. Or maybe it's because people don't want to sit their ass in a dome when it's bright and sunny out in Florida. That could be it either. Moving on to 2008, when the Rays would make the World Series, albeit they would lose to the Philadelphia Phillies in 5 games, their attendance rate was a lot higher at 62.1% in 2008. Coming up to 2018, where they had a little over 31,000 seats left in Tropicana Field, the attendance percentage was only about 45%, so that's quite a considerable drop-off, especially considering they won 90 games and just missed out on the postseason. This year, the Rays are just a couple games back from the New York Yankees in first place of the American League East, and attendance is definitely better than it was last year. It's currently sitting at about 58% attendance rate, which, like I said, is about a 13% increase from this year, but they also dropped another 6,000 seats. So they definitely are getting a higher percentage rate, but they're now the lowest maximum capacity stadium in all of Major League Baseball. The Rays have finished last in American League attendance rate ever since 2014, where they were 14th. So at this point, you probably realize a lot of people don't really come to Tampa Bay Rays games. Except when the Rays get the Yankees or Red Sox on a weekend night games, those usually fill up. In fact, they even had one sellout this year. In the Rays' 22 years of existence, they've only had 2 seasons where they finished within the top 10 of American League attendance, one of those being their opening year. So does it really even count? Now, there are many factors into why people don't really go to Rays games like that, but I think the most blatant is that it is in Tropicana Field. I myself live in Minnesota and have gone to quite a few games at the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome, where they used to play their home games before they now moved to Target Field in 2010, and outdoor baseball is just a lot different. That's in Minnesota. That's not even like compared to Florida weather, which is a lot better. It just feels really drafty, you know? It feels like you're in a warehouse. Not many people want to sit in a dome stadium when they could be outdoors and feel the sunshine on their face. It's just not fun. Really, the only positive of playing in a dome stadium is that rainouts pretty much never happen, but instead of rainouts, the Rays just get power outages. On top of that, I've heard it is hell and a half to even get to Tropicana Field, so if you mix in a really stressful and long drive over to their stadium, and with the fact that it's not exactly a pleasant stadium to visit, those just don't bode well. They don't really mix, and people don't go to Rays home games. Another factor I don't hear a lot of people talking about is really how the Rays are built. The Rays have had a 53% winning percentage ever since they entered into the league, which you might think is pretty good. They've had one World Series appearance, and ever since 2008, they made the postseason 4 times, and for the most part have remained competitive within the Yankees and the Red Sox in the American League East. However, they are notorious for always having pretty much the smallest or near the bottom of the payrolls in the MLB, never achieving over $80 million spent on their players. And you might think, over 53% winning percentage, never spent more than $80 million on a team in a single season, that's pretty damn good. Why is that a downside? The downside is they've never really had a superstar. They've never had a really huge name to draw in people to the Tropicana Field. Now, I know they had Evan Longoria, and trust me, I'm a huge Longoria fan, and he was really good in his prime when he was with us, but he was never a huge household name. And then you look at their team now, and their only really recognizable name is Blake Snell, who's a starting pitcher, and he only plays 1 out of every 5 games. So in summary, they do well, they perform well on field, 53% winning percentage throughout their tenure, but they've never really had any huge superstars to really bring people in and make it worth it to go through that drive over to Tropicana Field and sit through a game in that warehouse. Now, of course, the Rays have talked about opening up a new stadium, and they've actually released some images and what it might look like, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. I think we can all agree this would be a very, very nice stadium, and it really fits the Florida theme well. However, of course, the city of St. Pete is not exactly for it because they see the attendance. The Rays are not necessarily a moneymaker as it is right now, and the stadium would cost a lot of money. Both the things don't mix well. They don't want to do it. And that, of course, is going to lead us now to the Montreal situation. Montreal Expos have now been out of baseball for about 15 years. 2004 was their last season, and of course, they adapted to be the Washington Nationals. So Montreal failed as a baseball city, but now they want to become the first 2-city team within any of the 4 major professional sports within the last recent memory. Okay. Now this is just such a bad idea for so many reasons. For starters, you really could not get any further away. St. Petersburg Tropicana Field area to Montreal is about 1,500 miles away from each other, or for your Canadian fellows, 2,400 kilometers. 2 home stadiums, 1,500 miles away. How the hell does that make sense? Now, the way this is proposed, the Rays would split the season half in Montreal and half in Tampa Bay. So they play half their home games. Let's say they start the season in Montreal and then they finish out in Tampa Bay. Which means the Rays players would have to have 2 homes, one up in Canada and one all the way down in Florida. Not even to mention the families of these players. Are they going to live in Montreal? Are they going to live down in Florida? Or are they just not going to see their husband or father until they get back to wherever they are? And as I previously stated, the Rays have always had a payroll of under $80 million. They usually have a lot of young players that they don't have to pay a lot of money. So a lot of guys not making a lot of money and having to spend on 2 different houses or apartments, nah. Hell, even if I was making $10 million a year, I still don't want to pay for an extra home all the way up in Canada. The Rays in their 22 years of existence have not had a very rich baseball history. They have made 1 World Series, but like I said, a lot of people don't come to the games. A lot of players despise playing at Tropicana Field, and like I said, the Rays don't pay their players a lot. They really don't look for those high-tier free agents, so mix that in with the fact that these players now have to play in Montreal and Florida, that's even less likely for them to get new players. And the only reason the attendance has spiked 13% from last year in 2018 to this year 2019 is because the Rays are competing for the American League East. So if you make the team worse because they are having a harder time of getting players, who's going to show up exactly? Fair to say, I'm not a fan of the 2-city team idea at all. I've always thought it was a really weird thing to suggest. I know as a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, there's been proposed talk that the Jaguars would split home games, 4 in Jacksonville, Florida, and 4 in London, where of course they have pretty big ties. They play a home game each and every year there, but What? I know that's a little bit different. Florida to Canada is a little bit different from Florida to London. But it does really split up the fan base in my opinion. You have your guys in Florida, and then you have your guys up in Canada, and then I can already see there's going to be arguments. This stadium's better. We should just move it all up to Montreal. Or, you know, there's just going to be arguments, and I just don't see it working out. And like I said, it's going to be really hard on the players to have to split up their family even more than a Major League Baseball player would usually have to, because they would be split up in Canada and all the way down in Florida. Not even to mention home field advantage, which the Rays usually don't have anyway, because they actually oftentimes play better on the road than they do at Tropicana Field for obvious reasons. And then you try to split up the home games from what would be 81 to 40 home games per site, where players just won't even be that accustomed to whatever place they're playing in, because they don't get a full season. They only get half of it at each location. And then if the Rays do make the playoffs, presumably they would only be playing in one location for travel purposes, most likely in Tampa Bay to keep it within the United States. Can you imagine the Montreal fans? That they're going to get pissed, and it's just going to split up the fan base. It's going to make everybody frustrated. It's not a good idea. Speaking of traveling, it's just going to be a lot more miles that each team has to travel to get up to Montreal. I know a lot of teams are sometimes frustrated when they do have to play the Blue Jays, especially if you think about those teams like the Rangers or those teams down in southern states. It's a lot more miles that they have to travel, and then that's twice that you have to do it with the Tampa Bay Rays now. Probably my biggest gripe is just the distance between the two, St. Petersburg and Montreal. You literally could not get much further apart. If you're so hard set on a two-city team, why not have another team in the United States? There's so many more US cities deserving than Montreal. Think of the Carolinas, think of Las Vegas, think of Dallas, think of Portland. And that's just to name a few. There's plenty more cities that are a lot closer to Tampa Bay, a lot closer to Tropicana Field without entering another country. And like I said, Montreal failed as a baseball city. They relocated. Granted, Washington was always going to be a pretty hot spot for a baseball team, but they had a team and they failed before. Why not give a United States city a chance before going back to a place that just lost a team 15 years ago? If Montreal wants a team back, I think expansion is probably the most likely route. I have heard rumors about expansion being talked about within the MLB, and all four of the major professional sports have been talking about it as well. Of course, the NHL added the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and they're adding a team up in Seattle, I do believe. The NFL's talked about it, of course, the NBA. Expansion, most likely the way to go for Montreal. The Rays really have two options in my opinion, because it's pretty obvious that things really are not working out how they are right now. The most satisfying, I think we can all agree, would be the Rays getting a new stadium, whether that be within the St. Petersburg area that they are right now, or possibly moving within the state of Florida. I think Orlando would be a good site that's still relatively close. You know, it's still quite a ways, but it's not 1,500 miles. Orlando's a bigger city, it's a big tourist spot, and if the Rays continue being a good team, I can see that working out. Especially considering St. Petersburg doesn't really seem to want to fund for a new stadium. Maybe Orlando would, or somewhere else in Florida. Or they're going to have to pack their bags and relocate somewhere else. Those are really the two options in my opinion, because sustainably, I don't know how much longer the Rays are going to do it, because they have to create decreasing seats to make people even want to come a little bit more to Tropicana. And even though the Rays are a couple games back within the American League East, surpassing the 2018 World Series champs, and just a couple games back from the New York Yankees, have possibly 2-3 All-Stars on that team, people just don't come. And like I said, the whole two-city team thing, just in my opinion, is absurd to try to tell your players you're going to have to own two different houses, you're going to have to pay for both. So if the Rays can't find a new stadium proposition within St. Petersburg or pretty close within the state of Florida, they're probably just going to have to relocate, whether that be in Portland, Dallas, Las Vegas, you know, the Carolinas, a baseball city that people are going to come to, appreciate, and help them make money. Another possibility is refranchising. I guess we refranchised like 11 years ago from going to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays to the Tampa Bay Rays, like this logo that I'm wearing right now. You know, our colors changed, our logo changed, our uniforms changed, a lot of things changed, and that did help us out. Granted, we made the World Series that year. Probably just a coincidence though, but attendance was up that year, whether or not that's because of the refranchising or because, I mean, nobody knew they were going to make it to the World Series, but of course they won their division that year. So there's a lot of things to consider, but maybe freshening up the logo, getting new uniforms, which I think are decent, but could use a little bit of work. Just, I don't know, something different to shake things up and get people in Florida a little bit more interested to go to some Rays games. Well, I think that's going to be about it for this rant. Let me know down below in the comment section how you guys feel about the whole Tampa Bay, Montreal Rays situation going on. Do you guys think it's a good idea? Do you guys think it's a bad idea like me? What's really the next step for the Rays? What's the best thing that could happen? And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like down below. Let me know if this is something that you guys would like to see more often, me talking about real life baseball opposed to just MLB The Show. And if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, would really be appreciated. But thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. There you guys, some